Ever wonder what really goes on behind closed doors in HR? In this episode, I sit down with HR manager Seantea Stewart and we break it all down. Why HR still struggles to get respect, what happens when leadership says no, and how inner work changed everything for her as a leader. This is a conversation about hope and the importance of holding on to humanity no matter what. I'm Susie Schumacher, soul coach for leaders and intuitive strategist. This is Soul Hustle and Hype, where self-awareness meets leadership in real-time conversations. Let's fly.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about first how we met, because we used to work together.
Yes.
And I can't remember if I was in HR for your first job, because she was basically ran the reception area and was the ambassador of joy, even though not a lot of joy was coming at her. But she was always helpful, compassionate, no matter what came her way. And then a position in HR opened. And then tell me, so why, what was behind that? Why HR?
I think that when you all initially approached me, I wasn't even 100% sure what HR was. I knew y'all existed, but I didn't really have a framework for it. And so I think in that initial conversation, you were really the one that sold it to me. I know there were a few of us in the room, but you were really the one that sold it. And the interactions that I had with you previously, where I just kind of felt like you were this very balancing presence. And I felt like you had an actual mission in the work that you were doing, if that makes sense. I feel like you were there with a purpose. And so the idea of doing whatever you were doing was appealing to me. And then I think over time I figured out, oh God, there's actual work in here. But there was something that felt bigger about it to me.
Okay.
And that was kind of what drew me in.
So with the HR piece, I think now looking back, now that I've been retired for a while, I think it's interesting how we both were hired in HR and we didn't have the gazillion years of experience or certifications. Yeah. I know why I hired you, because the people part. And I think I was told why I got hired was when I was a chief steward for Ask Me, the union.
Yeah.
And because you forget all these things, but I realized that we both were hired based on the people part. But to me, that's too general. I think both of us were comfortable with communication that may not be the best situation.
Yeah. And I don't think I thought I had that skill set, right? I honestly think I learned a lot of that from you in terms of the power of being able to not only navigate a difficult situation, but the thing you sort of mentored me in, I think, was about getting to the root of what's happening in the room, right? So it's not just about coming in and being able to maybe find a solution or settle people or get people to, get up and leave at some point and end the meeting. But it was really about this is what you're saying, but there's something else that's needed. Yes. But it was more about getting to the root of whatever was happening, what people were the question behind the question, right? Or the fear behind the anger, or the need behind the anger, right? So you really taught me about this other way of communicating that disarms people first and then helps get to what the actual issue is so that we have real resolution. So that was a thing, maybe I was a good communicator, but you taught me how to do that extra thing.
Well, I appreciate the props, but I don't know. I just think that it's a huge gap in HR in general. And I think that we can teach the skill set of HR because it's process. And we all know it's kind of the same thing all the time, which is, it's not a bad thing, right? But
it's necessary.
Right. But within those processes, there's a lot of communication that involves you didn't get the job, you didn't get the request that you wanted, or speaking to someone of a higher level saying, we kind of can't do that. And the conflict that could be part of that. And also reading the room, where have awareness that what you're sharing, someone's head's exploding and their whole life is just been destroyed, even though it may not match what you're saying. And I think that part of the process with HR hiring and also training is talking about that communication part.
I think so too. And I think I don't know, even in the things you just named, right? Like I'm thinking recently about situations I've seen where we've had to walk people out of the building, right? Or where you are delivering that life altering, potentially devastating news to someone. And I think, and this, I mean, I know it probably sounds really elementary, but I think authenticity in those moments goes a long way, right? Like you used to always say that it's important to keep the humanity in human resources. And I think that when we walk in the room and we are delivering this life altering news and we come in robotic, right? And we're just checking boxes. I'm so and so, you're so and so, you're as of now, you're terminated and I need to get you out of the building, as opposed to coming in with some level of humanity and recognizing what the impact is that this moment is having on this person and meeting them in that moment and having compassion, having some level of empathy. You can still check your boxes. You can still get them out the room and collect their badge or whatever else you got to do.
Right.
But you can also meet them as a human in that moment and help them cushion the blow a little bit, or just let them know they're not completely by themselves, or you understand, or whatever. Right. And I think all of that goes a long way.
Right.
And there's a piece that's missing.
Well, I think that we underestimate the power of those moments, because that literally could change someone's life, how you treat them in that moment.
Yes, it does. And I was made aware of a situation not too long ago with, another agency, and they had to let someone go. And there was just, it was such a blow up the way that they were handling it, right? Like they had brought legal in the room and the person was crying and there was all this stuff going on. And there was another HR representative who sort of has that same mentality as you and I. And she was like, hold on. First of all, there's a lawyer holding one of this poor lady's plants. There is another person, that's got a garbage bag trying to put her books in it off the shelf. And it's just everybody hold on. The staff, we'll help her pack. And somebody from HR sort of walked in and was like, you guys get out.
Right.
Let us do this for her. Right. We know she's got to get out of the building, but there's a better way than what you all are doing.
Right.
And the lawyer's like, okay, we'll back off and you guys can handle it from here. And they were able to sort of calm the lady down and calm the staff down and take some of the trauma out of the situation, right? Because that's bananas. There's just sort of all this chaos. And again, I just think that goes to, as opposed to us being so focused on the end
and contain
whatever the charge is, just remember the people.
Right. Well, I think too, just because they're leaving the building doesn't mean that will be it. And I think that's the part where people get in their feels and or process, but that doesn't mean that person can't come back with a different lawsuit, a claim. And I just think that there is that place of humanity. And I don't think that there's a respect for that impact.
Yeah.
I know that when you were talking about needs and those needs not being met and how that, the reaction to that, that's kind of where I started realizing when I was looking back on my career, when, of course, I only remember the situations.
Right.
Those are the ones that wait, what happened there? And I realized that it was about our values.
Yeah.
And the one that came up to me is respect, and respect for other people, but also respect for the job and for HR. And I don't see, at least in my career, and when I would talk to other people at conferences, is that there still is that lack of respect for HR to be in those meetings where they're making decisions. And then when it doesn't go well, we're called in to do cleanup.
Yeah.
And that's where I thought, what was the hardest thing as an HR person? Cleaning up or defending other people's decisions. And that's where the respect part, because I would come in, I mean, you probably remember back in my younger days, I was a little more less soulful. I would go in like raised by wolves and, and like, what are you doing? You can't do this. And surprise, surprise, I'd stop getting invited to those meetings. And so it's valid emotion, but I think when we are aware of what those are, because we're held to the highest standard, neutral, neutral, neutral.
Yep.
And when in the worst case scenario, we're called up to say, what went wrong? What did you do? And so with knowing that, at least for me, the respect was the biggest one. Mm-hmm. And when you're in it right now, what would you say are the 3 values for you?
I think and not to make it sound corny, right? But I feel like the chief thing is the integrity piece, right? Like I need to be able to feel within myself that what I did was the right thing. Mm-hmm. Maybe not and that might not be the same as the thing I was asked to do, right? Mm-hmm. But the right thing, the fairness piece, and then I think the compassion piece. Because I feel like those 3 things center me. Those are the things that drive my staff. Like mm-hmm. I don't have to name compliance, right? That's our job. That goes without saying. But the framework for that compliance, what that compliance looks like, are we going to comply if it jeopardizes our integrity? If it is not fair, right? Then I think we need to revisit what it is that we're complying with, right? And when I'm talking about compliance, in a lot of cases, I'm talking about like directives, right? Like what mm-hmm. we've been asked to do as a staff or as a department. So I feel like those are the things that drive me. That's the thing I focus on, I think, the most with my staff. I talk a lot with them about, what's defensible, what is fair, what is consistent, remembering the people that get impacted by the decisions that we make, right? Mm-hmm. And by the action that we take and the way we choose to move. And yes, I think that those are like the things that are most important to me and drive the way I make decisions, like in my organization. It's not always well received.
And has there been a time that one of those have been challenged and it was not a very place of clarity?
All 3 every day, it seems like. Very recently in my organization.
So with the integrity, when that was, I just have to say as a side note, mm-hmm. my 3 respect is big, but integrity, fairness, and compassion. And I didn't want to say anything. And you said the same 3 things. Okay. Well, I think that it's when one of our values are challenged, because part of it is, at least in my experience, certain things, and we both have been in really intense situations. I call them arena level. We're in the arena. And then something else happens and we never not follow, like you said, the process piece.
Right.
But I think internally it impacts more, and either we beat ourselves up for what we didn't say and what we didn't stand up for, or we go into that meeting and be very clear on what they can't do versus coming from a place of what really matters to you about this.
And I'll go back a couple of agencies, right? Where, there were decisions that I needed to make in terms of like infrastructure wise, like how the framework that we're doing all of this activity in, and being asked to build that framework and then finding out that it works, finding out that it's defensible, finding out that it's fair, and that we have data to back that up. But then there are people in the organization who don't like that there is a framework now, right? I think that especially if you come into a place where there are people who have enjoyed a certain level of freedom, right? Or a lack of oversight and have been allowed to sort of do what they want to do. And then you have someone that comes in and saying like, hey, that's not actually the best practice for this. So, let's put these measures in place to make sure that we're being really consistent in how we're working. And then I get that pushback and I sort of am coming in the room with like the organization leadership and saying like, hey, this is a bad idea, right? Like if we do this, we're exposing ourselves unnecessarily, like we're opening ourselves up to liability. I don't think that this is the best path forward. It's not defensible. And it's really unfair to like our candidates, right? And then basically being told, yeah, we don't care.
So what do you think would happen if when they say, we don't care? I know you're generalizing, but because I think I would have handled it the same way. But now I think I would have been more about, because I think that what you're asking for wasn't really unreasonable. But I think that's where we get focused on, at least I did, on the compliance piece. And somewhere in there, I think it tapped into the fairness, compassion, integrity. Like, this is going to hurt other people. So we're talking about the integrity side, and that you just gave the example where you're introducing a new process. It sounded like, I think you used the word framework, and they said you tried to do the HR part, checked all the boxes there, and they said, basically, we don't care. What do you think about coming from more of a place of because what you're asking for is reasonable. Their response doesn't seem very reasonable. And coming from a place of more figuring out, what are you missing here as far as because something is coming up for them, and asking them, I'm curious, why is it so important to you to keep the old process?
So that's actually what I did, right? So you and I had a conversation at one point when I was dealing with this, and that's actually what I did. And there was still, I think, a lot of resistance in the room, but the gist of it was that there's sort of and I mean, I don't even know if this is appropriate to say, but there's just sort of a hierarchy of needs there, right? And people who need to be made comfortable, right? And we've already done a lot of the heavy lifting. And that was really what they said to me. Like, this is essentially us asking you to take your foot off the gas, right? I know what we asked you to do initially. You've done that and then some. Take your foot off the gas so we can make these people happy and we don't have to deal with complaints from them. That is now the priority, right? And then, what do I do with that?
Well, what I heard was they said you did a good job, but I don't know if you heard that.
I was too mad.
You did a good job. But I think, so maybe you're the one who we need to ask the questions. So you've just demonstrated what happens when our values are challenged. But see, because they actually were saying to you, you did a good job and you even did extra. So what do you think was going on in that moment where you walked away mad and completely didn't hear how fabulous you are? Because I want to just give a moment here where I understand the level of higher ups, and I know what you're trying to say. And you went into that room on your own and handled it.
Right.
And even got them to acknowledge that you did a good job. But that's as far as we're going to go.
First of all, I was so mad about the resistance I was getting. I didn't even notice it.
Well, explain the resistance, because it sounds like who was resisting?
So the way that it really worked out, right? I'm trying to do it without making it too clear where I was, right?
Right.
But sort of the way it went was I just received a message through a couple of levels, like, hey, take your foot off the gas. You want to go back to the old process, right?
Okay.
And then through additional conversations over a couple of weeks, then we kind of get to, well, the priorities have changed, right? We're not in the same position that we were in before. The work you guys have done has gotten us out of there, so we can focus here now, right? Like we don't have to prioritize. We're not in such a desperate situation anymore. We don't have to prioritize that work. And now we just want to make sure that these people are happy, right? So to me, that didn't sound like, oh, you guys did a great job. That sounded like we're reverting to a process that is essentially indefensible, right? We're going to throw away the work that this team did, even though it was working.
Right.
And we're just going to revert because we've got people we need to make happy, as opposed to a process that needs to be defensible. And that was really where I sort of had tunnel vision in that moment. Like, we built this thing from the ground up. I sold my team on the need to sort of create this fair, defensible situation. And we've done that. And now you all are saying, yeah, great. We're going to go back to what we were doing before.
Okay. Well, I think that part of this is a good example too of you've done the best that you can, because I think too, there's definitely some values being challenged in that room. I could pretty much identify them if I wanted to, but I think that you as the lead in that room representing HR, you followed the directive and did the best that you could. But within there is still some respect as far as notifying you that thanks, but no thanks.
Right.
And that's one thing that there was some energy that you brought into that room where they trust you.
Yeah. It doesn't always feel like that though, right? And that is
Right.
that a lot of that is probably on me, because I think I sort of come in, as much as I'm trying to be open and level and whatever else, I do still come in, at least internally, guns blazing, right? And like waiting for
Mhm.
somebody to tell me that we have to, you know what I mean? Just braced for
Right.
whatever this crazy wild change is going to be.
Right.
But I do remember,
Because reoccurring. Yeah.
exactly. And I do remember in that moment mostly thinking about like my team, right? Because I came in that space as a new manager to a team that was already established and had to do work to build trust with them, right? Not just trust as a person, but trust as like someone who could lead them, trust as someone who had some level of expertise that could be a resource for them, right? And I sold them on this idea that there is this bigger purpose that we have in what we're doing. And look at what we get to do, look at what we get to build, and bringing some value to the work. And then knowing I was going to have to go back and have a conversation with them about, oh yeah, they don't want it anymore. We're going to go back to that weird thing we were doing before I got here, right?
Well, how does that one decision take away that all that you said, we're going to have value, we're going to have trust, we're coming from the place that is we're protecting people and it's the best process. How does them saying no take away all of that? Because I want to give just a little side note here that when you said I knew I had to go back to my team, and there's a lot of leaders that have been in that place. And I'm glad you brought that up because half the time we're bummed that what we worked on didn't happen. But I mean, they're not talking about our loved ones, or they're not saying we're not getting fed tonight, But that is a beautiful, beautiful energy, Seantea. And I want to acknowledge that because for leaders out there, sometimes we forget that the simple things like that, you care what your team, you care for your team because your team is going to be the ones that have to carry that out.
Like that's us. And
right. But yeah,
it was I remember going in the room to talk to them about it. And, my thing, I'm kind of known, I hate meetings, right? So we have a standing meeting like every other week on the calendar, and literally the whole department clowns us because I cancel it every single time because I'm just like, everybody's popping in my office. We don't need to meet. It's fine. And so they know if I'm calling.
No judgment on that. That was me too. I just close my door all the time.
Just come on
and hide and eat chocolate.
I remember. But so they knew, like, okay, if Seantea is saying we have to have a meeting, like something's happening, right? And so I just remember sort of calling them in the office, and there was this sigh of disappointment, right, that happened when I said, okay, look, this is what they're asking us to do. And I felt like I was like trying to like have like a George Washington moment or something, I was like trying to rally the troops again. And I'm trying to tell them, like, the thing about this is, like, we have a value system that exists no matter what, right? Like, we've developed a value system for this team and this work that we do that stands no matter what else is going on. So let's talk about ways that we can allow our value system to take the driver's seat in this framework that they're telling us we have to work in, right? So what does that look like? And then that was the conversation that we had. And we came up with a list of things that we could still do in the framework, in the directive that we'd been given. And that's what we proposed to the executives. We said, okay, we hear you. We're going to do this. But this is what we're saying we need to add to enhance that, to make sure that our process is still defensible, to make sure that we're still being fair, to make sure that our ethics and integrity are in the forefront. And they bought it. But my team did that.
Okay, they did it, but I think your statement of we have our own values and our own framework. Yeah. I'm highlighting these things because I think that I don't know, leaders aren't talking about this stuff. And you're just pulling magic left and right. And so we need to address this. And I think part of it is also at some point you decide to do your own inner work.
Yeah.
And I think how that ties to being a leader is important. But I mean, the fact that you had set a value and a framework of that creates trust. Even if, nothing's going to happen. It's all going to, a big old hole in the ground.
What it feels like.
Crack open. We're all, it is there.
And
it does feel like that. But that's where you've created trust, because you went in, you fought the fight. Because a lot of folks may say that I'm not going in there. I know that I'm going to get my so-and-so handed to me. I got a career to think of. I got, A, B, and C.
Right.
But then there's folks that go, I have to do this because it's in line with my integrity. And that's part of being a leader but I think a lot of folks maybe it's not that they don't want to have that meeting. They don't know how to respond to language without choice.
I think that's like, I don't want to say that that's a thing you are like born with or anything, right? Like, I think it's a thing you can learn how to do. But I also think what I've set up with my team, right? And this took time and vulnerability to do. I have made it very clear to them, I don't know everything, right? I do have a certain level of expertise in this field, but I don't know everything. And y'all teach me stuff all the time, right? And I also will always fight for us, but I'm not always going to win. I'm not the head honcho around here, right?
Right.
Y'all report to me, I report to everybody else. And I'm saying that as in like, that's the context that we have these conversations in. So I can go, and I've established this with them, so I can go in the room and they know that I'm being honest, right? I had this meeting with the executives. This is the direction they want to go. I fought for us, but I was outnumbered. So this is what we got to do. Let's figure out how we can still keep our values and do this thing that they're asking us to do. Let's talk about it. And we had like an hour-long conversation where we were just throwing out ideas about ways that we could be in line with what we were being asked to do and still be us, right? Still be authentic to what is true for us and what doesn't jeopardize our integrity. And it's a day-to-day thing with us, right? Like, they're checking in with me all the time. This is what we're being confronted with. Like, how should we handle it? Or, what should we do? But I'm finding that over the last however long this has been now, they're leading with their own level of integrity now. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're not waiting for it to come from me. Like, they come in the room with it now. And I love it. It's so great to see.
Okay. Let's honor that statement right there. Because when you were talking too, I was thinking that you are demonstrating to them a new definition of winning. Because if that had not happened, you had not got the answer that you got, you would not have gone back and had that conversation. But you also made the choice to come from a place of vulnerability. Because of that, you worked together. And like you said, they came up with that, but you were also there to guide, and you bring an energy of trust. Like, you bring this energy. It started out as an ambassador of joy, but now you're an ambassador of we can do this, and you can be vulnerable and you can make a mistake. But that's what it just came to me very clearly, where you are teaching them a new definition of winning. Yeah, you guys didn't get the yes, but man, what an opportunity for a connection. And I hope that you are seeing that, which was led by you.
I think I don't think about it this way until you and I have these conversations, because a lot of times I'm just like another hard thing we have to do, right? Or another way I got to try to finesse success out here, right? But what I will say is, being with this particular group of people has taught me a lot about myself and what it means to lead, and how different it looks when I'm doing it in real time versus what I thought it would be, right? So I think especially in like human resources, and I think this, there's like two types, right? There's like that very like data driven, I have my spreadsheets and
Excel,
and then there's
not excelling in the job, but excelling in Excel.
And then there's those of us who are trying to like do this other thing where there's something meaningful that's happening, right? Like, okay, I have your numbers, but like, those numbers are people, right? And what does this mean for the people? And so I didn't know that I could do well if I wasn't the data girl, right? I still don't know how to make a pivot table. One of my staff was in a meeting with me, and somebody else was saying, "Oh, Seantea, just make a pivot table." And my staff just put her hand on my shoulder and was like, I'll do that for her. She doesn't know how to do it. And I don't. And ain't no shame.
Thank
15
you.
classes, people, I
Right.
still can't do them.
Right.
But
because the pivot table's not coming up in the conflict and the hard situations and the deposition. And they're not going to go, so can you please explain how to do a pivot table?
These pivot tables? No, I can't. But I can tell you
And no disrespect to the pivoters.
Right.
But I have to say that it's a very small club, unfortunately, of the, the communicators and the people, only because I found that it usually I was alone in talking about the human side. And then normally it would be more, oh, you're just too nice or you're the people person. Right. Well, that is a good thing. But I'm glad you're bringing this up because for those folks out there that are leaders that don't have all of the technology certifications, all of that, there's enough people out there that would rather do that.
Yes.
Than go into the den of lions. But
exactly.
That's where there needs to be more respect for it. But also, we can't be the only ones. Because I know in my experience before you left, pretty much the only one who handled the conflicts. And in the beginning, it was, I think part of it made me feel special and validated. But once I was in supervisor and then manager, it's like, I can't be the only one. It's not healthy anyways to just have that one perspective.
Exactly.
But I think, do you find that in the interview process for HR, I don't know if I focus so much on that. I don't think they focus enough in the job specs. Because ultimately, you're giving people information that may not be great. Right. And you're having to stand up like what you did for processes. Yeah. And people who aren't comfortable or just don't, we say they don't want to explain the no.
Right. I'll be honest. When I hire now, I look for that, right? And I'm learning how to gauge that a little bit better in my processes, how to vet that part of people, right? Because I need both. And I'm finding that I have some hybrids, right? I have some people who are, there's a few members of my team who are stellar at data. They are my go-tos when I need to pull reports, when I need queries run or whatever else. They got it. And they can analyze that data and they can tell me about the standard deviation. I don't know what that means either. But they can tell me about all that stuff, right? And they can have a conversation with management when needed, right? And they can tell people, no, they may need some guidance, right? They may need backup, but they have the willingness and enough of that fire in them to go in the room and initiate, right? They're not scared. Okay. And so that's what I'm learning how to pull out of people. I'm starting to know how to see it in them, but I don't know that that's what we're at large vetting for, right? And I don't think that our specs are written in a way that reach those particular people and bring them into this space.
Well, I like the way that you say that when you start to see it in them and then you address it in that time. Because I think a lot of times it's you wait and say, oh, maybe this time. Oh, wait, maybe this time. And the hybrid part, I think overall we all have to be hybrid. But I think that, the data part. What about, okay, so as a leader in HR, what is the hope that you have for HR? And this is like an active hope that you can put in place for the future.
I hope that I'm not even sure I know how to say it. I hope that the way things are going, I hope that we get better at caring for people. And I hope we get better at building trust. What I'm finding, I was in a leadership academy recently and there was folks from 20 different organizations. We're all having the same issue with people don't trust us, right? As soon as they get a call from us, they're like, what do you want?
Oh, they don't trust HR.
Yeah, what are you here for? What do you want? And you taught me that we are Switzerland, right? We are just trying to do the best thing, the fairest thing. Whoever that advantage is, it's going to vary from time to time. We're just trying to do the best thing, the fair thing. And I find it feels like every conversation I have, I'm starting from scratch, right? I'm trying to get you to realize I just want to do the right thing. I'm not your enemy, whether you're the head of the organization or you're a candidate or you're an employee. I just am trying to do the fairest thing. So my hope is that we'll have enough people with integrity and compassion in human resources that we start to build trust in that function across the board. And then I can't remember what I said in the beginning, but that too.
Well, the compassion and care part, I think that it needs to go both ways. And I know that in my career, when some moments what I would just say, what's going on? Like, why are you reacting this way? And that takes time. But I think with leaders that we also need to cut ourselves some slack where we've done the best we could. I don't think we do that. At least I don't think you do it. I don't think I did it. I always remember what the one sentence that was negative, and it haunts me, that drive home, the commute, and you're like, and that's the thing where the checklist, did I do the best I could? Yes. But I think as HR people and also as leaders, where getting comfortable with having that conversation of how you're feeling, like how I'm receiving that is this. And, having the human piece of it. Because somewhere in there, like you said earlier in the podcast, is about something that someone wants and needs. And it may not be physical. I need trust. I need this not to happen, because if I do, then I'm not in control. And why does that bother you? Well, because last time someone said this was going to go well, it went to.
That's it.
But that's where we have to have a little mini, not a coach, but you know what I'm trying to say? Like, let's have the real conversations instead playing these back and forth. And also with employees where, with morale, what does that mean?
Right.
You can do 8,000 surveys, but sitting down, which is what you're doing with your team, because what one department or one group of people are feeling some sort of way, it doesn't mean everyone feels that way.
Right. And I feel like they have that awareness now. We had gotten word, like when all this was happening, we got word that people are complaining about the process, and almost simultaneously they all said, no, which people are complaining about the process, right? Because we know it's not everybody. So
right
to us, right?
Right.
But it's that awareness that they have.
And 9 times out of 10, it's probably the person who's saying all these people are unhappy with is someone who reports to them, and they don't want to tell that person. But I think, and that's part of HR where I don't know if those personalities are, because it also takes inner work and owning your own stuff. And there's a lot of people I realize that have not done inner work.
It's hard.
And it is hard. But I think you're just a good example of what happens when you do inner work. It is hard, but so we're coming to the end here, but when you were doing your inner work and you were going through some intense things, what kept you going?
I think it was a couple things, right? I think somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew I was getting somewhere, right? Like I knew that this was like a means to an end, right? The pain of doing this work get me to this other emotional, mental, healthy space that I'm trying to get to, right? And I think the other drivers were things like wanting to be the absolute best I could be for my daughter, wanting to be the best for my team. I'm never really comfortable saying this because I feel like there's a lot of different philosophies about relationships in the workplace and like how you should view your coworkers, and you've got the group that's like, I'm just here to work, I'm not here to make friends, whatever.
Right.
But I have real relationships with the people that I work with, and that is intentional, right? I have real relationships with my staff, and that was also a driver for me, right? As I'm doing this work to try to be this better manager, to try to see things more clearly, to try to have a better compass, right? As I'm making decisions and whatnot. Part of what kept me going in that direction was I've got these people that are looking at me and need me to be able to make these decisions and have these conversations and think clearly, right? And not be coming from this place of crazy emotion, chaotic emotion, and fear.
Right.
I think that was another thing that kept me I have, beyond just myself, I've got people in my life that I need to be my best self for, I think.
Well, I think too that when you said, I know it sounds like it starts with your daughter, but then as a leader, it is important we don't necessarily have to be, have the relationships with them, but the power that we hold.
Yeah.
And what we say and what we do and the authority and the example, and, they go to us. And if we can't come from a place but also be able to say, today's a rough one for me.
Mm-hmm.
Can I get back to you tomorrow?
It means something. And you know this, Susie, because I think we've both experienced this at various points in our careers, what it means to have a manager that really supports and values us as individuals, not just as workers or cogs in a wheel, versus that manager that is just like, well, what time are you coming in?
Right.
And well, when are you going to have that done? Do you know what I mean? Like there's a difference in how we experience work and existing in the workplace when we've got that kind of manager versus someone who actually sees and cares for and understands us and is willing to meet us where we are and is willing to say, hey, I need a minute. Hold on.
Right.
I think all of that is valuable. Like you don't have to have super personal relationships with your staff, but if there is a certain level of, I think, authenticity and vulnerability that has to exist in order for you to have a successful working relationship with your people.
Right. And have them be comfortable sharing that I don't really know what I'm doing.
Or I made a mistake, right? Like when I
made a mistake.
When I first started managing, man, people were didn't want to tell me that they made a mistake. Didn't want to tell me they made mistakes. And I could remember a thing you used to say, as long as you didn't mess up nobody's money, we could probably fix it. Right? And I still say that, look, y'all, we're not doing brain surgery in here. Okay.
Yeah, no one really knows anything unless it's their cash.
It's a personnel action form. Now, come on. We'll retract it. We'll put in a new one. We're okay. Right. But I have to establish that so that we can get in front of mistakes. And now they're not afraid to make them because they know I'm not going to kill anybody. Right. And so we're able to get in front of things. I know things ahead of time. I can clean things up. But like I said, all of that there's a lot of elements to it, but the basics of it is us being authentic, us being willing to be vocal with our people. And a lot of that other stuff just falls in place.
What I just call whatever happened before you.
Oh, girl.
That's where, and I think what us being clear of, we need a break. Yeah. I think part of it is so they don't think it's about you or about them. Right. But there is that part of, okay, you're acting like, what's going on? You made a slight error and opening up that dialogue. But yeah, I think too, and those people who, you can't be late, they're spying on you and all that stuff. One, that energy. But then I wonder what happened to you.
This is what I tell them.
What happened to you that now I see it with more compassion versus I used to go in there going, what do you, no,
get it out.
Stop it. Right. But then maybe why does this matter so much to you other than them being late?
And you'll find there's always something.
Right.
And there's always a reason, some crazy thing that happened to them back in the day. And now they just are maintaining this.
They hold on to it, or no one cut me a break.
Exactly. Nobody cut me a break. So I ain't cutting no breaks. I understand that you're hurt, but is this really the environment you want to create with these people?
Well, and that's the thing too. Why did you become a leader?
Right.
So you could be in that.
So you could finally do it to somebody else.
Right. Because the workplace is changing, and that is just not going to fly. It shouldn't fly anyways, but it is changing. And to have the compassion, because usually, in my experience, maybe 1 out of 100 are the ones that are being,
right.
Where everyone else, they had some going on in their personal lives, or and that's where you build also loyalty.
Susie, can I just talk about that for 1 second?
That is worth $1 million gazillion dollars. Loyalty.
It truly is. I can tell you, when it comes to the people I manage now, just the fact that I don't press them, right? Like, you already know, I don't care. Seantea, can I please take off? Yes. If you got the time, you can go. Just tell me if you got something pending I need to take care of. Go. I don't care. Take your kids to Disneyland, go to the soccer game, whatever, right? We're all grown and the work is getting done, right? That's the main thing. So whatever else you need to do, it's fine. I don't care. But because of that, right? Because of the trust that's there, because they know I'm not tripping off of whatever else they need to do to exist healthily, right? Whatever they have to do for their families and whatever else. And they know I have their back. And there's no ego in what I'm about to say. When I need something done, Susie, If it means somebody got to stay past 5 or whatever else,
Right.
I don't hear nothing about it. They just do it. There's
Exactly.
a couple times where I said, why are you still here? Oh, we wanted to make sure we got this done before we went because we know you said it was kind of important. Well, I didn't want you to stay late. Well, no, it's okay. We got it. I don't have to beg for nothing.
And see that, I'm glad that this came up because that's huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
And I know stuff would be going down. I don't know if people would be offering, but I would say, everyone on deck, all hands on deck now. I don't know if it was as kumbaya as your situation, but like I said, you're the new generation, thank goodness.
We had real fires where we was working at Susie.
But everyone showed up.
Yeah.
And they would make it happen. But also people have lives. But you have to break in some people where I don't need the 3-paragraph email of why you need to be off. But take care of you. I don't need to know anything. But or also if you come in with half a lung falling out of your chest, you were there. I'd say I don't give awards for martyrism.
Remember you used to say, ain't nobody getting no points for coming in here with the flu.
No, you're not getting points for coming in with a lung hanging out of your mouth. Right. Not happening here.
Exactly.
Just go home and be well.
Yourself.
Right.
They're people, right? And
right.
I don't understand this other mentality, but I know that I have been able to accomplish so much more because of the relationships that I've been able to build and the trust that's there. I promise you, Susie, I don't have to worry about anything.
Right. But that's because also you have shown that you're human. You're not a perfect being and you have your moments. And I think that you're the demonstration of the leadership that we need to be doing. But I just have one question. We've been talking about hope. What is the hope that you have for your daughter?
I hope that she is fearless. That's really my hope for her. Because I feel like she's so brilliant and she's so confident that as long as fear doesn't do to her what it's done to me in the past, like the sky is the limit for her. She could literally do anything. She could be an astronaut who plays the drums and runs track on the weekends. She can literally do anything. I just want her to be fearless. That is my hope for her, is that nothing seeps in at some point and makes her afraid to the point that she starts living her life from that place of fear. Because I did that. And it prevented me from experiencing a lot of joy. And it prevented me from probably doing a lot of things that would have been really amazing for me. And I don't want that for her. I want something better for her. And this freedom that I see in her now and her willingness to try just about anything, I do not want her to lose that ever.
Well, that was a perfect way to end it. And I hope that you honor yourself in that moment, because sometimes what we experience, we pass on, and that not always the good stuff. Yeah. So I want to take a moment to honor you for that and giving that strength and that love first for yourself. But we never know what's going to make it. And I think possibly having your daughter, but that decision that you made, I mean, what you just said was pretty powerful.
It's the truth. And like I said, I know how much, like we see it all the time, even in like the work that we do, the way that fear stifles everything.
Right.
It leaks everywhere. And if you've got somebody who doesn't have that, like it's a game changer. I want her to be one of those people.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Well, thank you, Seantea. Until we meet again.
This has been great, Susie. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Soul Hustle and Hype. If this episode connected to something you've experienced, share it with a fellow leader who might need it too. And if you're ready to tap into your superpower of awareness, reach out and let's keep the conversation going. You can find me on Instagram at Susie Soul Coach or at SusieSchumacher.com. Until next time, let's fly.